Okay, so all right, guys. So, first of all, I'd like to, say, talks about some few things before I start this video. Okay, so first of all, happy new month and happy new year, of course. So this week, I'm starting this week to, make always, I'm committing now to, be making video, top down about like, let's say, video outlook on the pair I'm looking out to trade this week. And this video will cover this video and everything and the outlook and the top down analysis I will do cover everything that I'm expecting price to do to happen this week. I'm expecting to happen this week to anticipate this week. So what I would do now is to, move down to chart on to EU. Of course, you guys have known me for a while now that um I focused on one pair which is EU and another pair I would say I do always like to, focus on is Bitcoin, but that's crypto, right? In crypto aspect, right? So I focus on currency, I focus on Euro USD and crypto, just Bitcoin alone. And also, but that's not the only thing I trade, right? That's not the only thing, and that doesn't mean this where my, my age works or right. So it works, my strategy works on in all asset class, right? It works everywhere, right? So I just choose to, put my energy on this one pair, and I wish you guys could, also look for suitable pair and just focus on studying that pair to them, so you could, really, get to start, building up your age and your understanding about the market structure and price movement, all that. So this record won't be all about that, right? So I'm gonna move down to do the top-down analysis on EU. Of course, I've already did some analysis, but for the purpose of this video, I'm gonna just, recap the analysis and just start afresh and bring everything down and just do the, show you guys how I come up with my bias and what I'm looking out for on EU throughout the week, right? So let's move straight to it, all right? So here is the Euro USD pair, right? So first of all, as you can see, I've already did my analysis, but I'm gonna, clean this up and, start the analysis very fresh with you guys, so you guys could, follow up with and understand what I'm doing so far. All right, excuse me. I need no. All right, sorry guys. All right, so first I'm gonna clean off this chart and just start everything up fresh and show you guys how I come, you know, down to this. Okay, so I'm gonna leave others there, right? So on the 4 hour time frame, or should we start on the, let's just start on the daily time frame or weekly self, okay? So this will be my first video public like this. So I will just need to, start on the higher time frame to really, make things clear to. So when I move down to the lower time frame, like to the 15-minute time frame, you could know the reason why I'm expecting price to do what I'm expecting to do, right? So on the weekly time frame here, on the weekly time frame, let's zoom out a bit, right? So on the weekly time frame here, you can see clearly that historically Euro USD has been on a bearish market on the weekly time frame order flow, right? This is what I mean, right? This is where we have this high, right? We have price comes down, take off this low, right? Give us a new structure low, right? Then from there, price then pushed up again, right? Pushed up again, but because there was a lot of selling power in the market. Notice this is weekly time frame, right? So this is weekly time frame, right? So I'm just trying to, run through the weekly chart so we could have a clear direction in mind to, have a clear view of what price is currently has been doing. And so we could, know where the price is most likely heading to in the future, right? So this was the break we have, and price made a push up. Then from this pushed up, if you notice at this block, price consolidates a lot at this range before making the huge push up to the upside, right? Price consolidate around this point before breaking out of this box and move up. Then after that, what did price do? Of course, on a consolidation market, and before price actually break out of this consolidation, break out of this box, right? This box, it grabs liquidity too. Notice that on this weekly time frame, as I'm doing the top down, analyzing the structure, we also have to, spot the liquidity point, right? How price, manipulate a low or a high before moving to the opposing direction, right? So at this point, what you can see here was price just consolidating at this point. Then because there was enough buying power at this point, price did not just spike up like that. Price then have to, grab some liquidity. Notice, still have in mind that this is 1 month chart, right? Right. So after that, where would the liquidity lies? Right. This will be below this low, right? Below that low. And what happened then? Price consolidate around this area. Then afterward, price comes down and take out this low. That was liquidity grab there, right? We have this sweep, right? I'm gonna, make sure to, try to make this video fast as possible. At least it should be at least 30 minutes or more, or let's just say anyhow, let's just you know focus, right? So this is where we have the liquidity grab, and afterward, what did price do? After taking out that liquidity, price pushed up and break this high. Then breaking that high tells us that here that price, this was where price grab liquidity. So what are we gonna expect after price has break out of this consolidation, right? Of that ranging box, right? What are we gonna look out for? We're gonna expect price to push back, made a retracement back, because at this point we are bullish, right? We are expecting price to made a pullback to this flip zone, sweep zone, right, to the demand zone at this point. At this point, this would be the demand zone, right? This will be the demand zone where we will expect price to, push back to before we, go in on the long, right? So that's the demand zone there. So what do we see in the market, right? What do we see? Price push back to the flip zone, to the demand zone that takes out that liquidate this low, right? This also knew that that was an institutional zone, right? This demand zone here is an institutional zone because it grabs liquidity before leading to a break of structure. And this is weekly structure we're talking about, right? So afterward, what happened? Price, pull back to that demand zone, mitigate that demand zone very nicely, and start pushed up again because there was a lot of pending order at this point, and price comes down and mitigate that demand zone nicely. Even upon that, price still create some kind of manipulation like inducement point at this point. right? Because if you closely, observe, you will see that we have a a a, a selling, a mid movement pivot order block at this point. Like we have a selling power, a kind of demand zone at this point. We also have a demand zone at this point. But all these demand zone are a reaction point, and this entirely is the extreme demand zone, right here, right? This entirely is the extreme demand zone, right? This is the extreme demand zone right there, right? And if you also look, we also have this small, like these little zones here, right? We also have these zones, and that's still a demand zone. And we also have this zone, right? So this was just a reaction point, a liquidity. This was just a trap to lure people in, to mix people, because if you move closely, if you move to the lower time frame to observe how price react on this point, trust me, you may find a shift, a bullish shift at this point, and feel that price gonna, skyrocket, like move up at this point. But what happened? Price still keep surging down, moving down, then moving to this next demand zone. What happened? Price give a reaction and start, giving this bullish sign. What happened next? Price comes down and, smash that block, and you keep losing, right? Where was price heading to? Price were actually heading to this block that takes out that, sweep liquidity, right? That's where price, comes in and mitigate that block nicely before we start seeing that push to the upside. And where would that push lead to? That push would have been led to, taking out, giving us a new break of structure. After this break of structure, right? This was the break we this was the first break of structure we had, right? We have this break of structure, and we have this low, we have this high. So then price made a pullback to the extreme demand zone and push back up again. And what happened? And what happened afterward? Price then, you know, pushed up, unable to break out to take out this high. Price start, falling down again. And where did price fall to? Price falls down and take off this low, break below this low, and even the extreme validation low, invalidation point, right? Which was this, right? Right. So if we remember, this is weekly time frame. I'm not using this weekly time frame to, try to, you know, get an entry, right? I'm just using it to understand the context, the order flow, to have a big view of what price has been doing in the past, right? So I could know where price is most likely heading to, right? Like I said earlier, right? So this was an invalidation point. An invalidation point is a strong low or a strong high that led to a break of structure, right? For price to remain bullish or bearish, that strong low or strong high must be valid. Price must respect that strong low. Coming back, it must respect the demand zone and pushed up. And what do we see here? And for us to see price breaking that strong low means that the price structure, the market structure has totally changed. So this is where we have the shift, right? This is where we then have the market shift, price shift back to, this is where we then have price shift back to bearish, right? And we then have this high. This high then becomes the strong high, right? And we then have the strong low, right? Notice how I mark this other eye, right? Notice how I mark this other eye, because where this supply zone here is the flip zone, right? It's a flip zone. Why? And why do I call it a flip zone, right? This is a zone that flip a demand zone, right? It's a supply zone that flip a demand zone. This was a valid demand zone here. Price comes down and respect that block. Nicely pushed up. Couldn't, have enough fuel to, break this high. What did price do? Price start, moving down again. Moving down, it takes out this demand zone, right? That means this demand zone has failed to do its job, right? This other high that led to price breaking past this low and giving us the market shift becomes our flip zone that flip from demand to supply, right? So we most likely gonna see price, push back to that flip zone and respect that flip zone, and that's where we can, still expect a huge move in the market, right? And that's why you see price, react this way on this zone, right? That's why you see price, react like this on this zone just a week, right? I remember taking a trade to this point, right? Holding a trade to that point. The trade was actually 1:10. That was my first time of holding trade to like 1:10 risk to reward, right? That was my first time, right? So of course, why did I know that? Because I this is the same top-down analysis I did, right? I've did it for a long time and I've been expecting EU to keep going up, right? To keep going up to move up to this supply zone, and we finally got there and we start having this bearish move in the market. So this brings us back to where we are on the current market. So now you can understand that we are currently at this point right here, and price has pulled back to that flip zone. And then what am I expecting now? I'm expecting price to fall back down. I'm expecting EU to then fall down to then sell from this point. So this sell could last till this point, but of course, we are not trading the one weekly time frame, right? We are just using to grade buyers, right? To grade directional buyers, right? To know where price is, you know, heading to, right? So now that we understand that the weekly trend is bearish now, and we are currently expecting price to, mitigate, which price has already mitigate the flip zone now, start giving a bearish sign right now. So what are we then gonna look out for on the lower time frame? So on this weekly time frame, we know that the trend is bearish, the order flow is bearish, and we're gonna be looking out for, and price has moved to the a flip zone, a supply zone, an extreme supply zone, which is this zone, which is this supply zone here that led to a break of structure and this shift, right? So that was a valid supply zone. So now that we know that price has made a pullback to a valid supply zone, what will we then look out for? We then look for confirmation, right? We then look out on the lower time frame, like the daily time frame. What we will look out for will be to understand where this trend a valid structure at this point, so we could know that if price break that structure, then the daily time frame will now signal to what, if price on the daily time frame shifts totally to bearish, because if we move down to the daily time frame, you will clearly see that the trend is still bullish, and pullback hasn't this pullback hasn't been over yet, is not yet over until the daily structure shifts to bearish, which will then align with the weekly structure. Then we can start looking for the sell, right? We can start looking for the sell, but let's just observe market for what it is and not what we think is most likely gonna happen. And let's just that's the best thing you need to know, because you don't have to predict what will happen in the market. You just have to anticipate the market move, observe the structure, do what the market is telling you, not what you're feeling, not what you feel the market will do. So now let's move down to the daily time frame now, right? Now this is the daily time frame, right? On this daily time frame, on this daily time frame, you can clearly see that we are bullish. But on the weekly time frame, we know that the trend is bearish and price has pulled back to the extreme supply zone and has mitigate the flip zone, the supply zone, and that's when we start having this sell reaction. Yeah, right. So on the daily time frame, what we are here to understand will be this structure, the recent structure range at this point. So this will be our recent structure range, right? We have this is when price, was giving us lower low, lower high, right? Higher low, right? Higher high, higher low, right? we have higher high, we then have higher low, we then have higher high. So this is the structure we're gonna be looking out for. Right, so this is a most recent structure. This is a most recent structure. We have the break of structure, we have price taking out that zone, and we have our low, daily low at this point. We have this low, that a swing low, right? Swing low, not swing high. Sorry. Okay. So another thing on the daily time frame now, we have identified our recent structure range now. We know that this is our recent break of structure, right? We have this low, we have this high, right? So now what are we expecting? If this weekly zone is to be, valid, then let's expect we should then see price coming down to take out this low. And when price comes down and take out this daily strong low, this strong low right here, the swing low right here, this will tell us that the trend now, the daily trend now have shift, order flow now have shift bearish, right? The daily structure have shift bearish, right, at this point, and this bearish also align with the weekly structure. Then what we would then look out for will be a pullback to a premium price range to, expect sell, to continue the sell, right? To just keep, expect price to, just do nothing but to keep selling. Note that price may not, most likely have to make a deeper pullback to the extreme demand supply zone, right? Price could just, made a little after break, giving us a shift, make a little pullback and just collapse. That's still the possibility. So so on the daily time frame now, we have marked out our recent structure range, which is this high and low, right? So now let's move down to the 4 hour time frame, right? So so to me, this week, this is the daily time frames. So throughout, what I will be expecting will be for price to, EU to just keep falling, like keep selling till it takes off this low. I'm expecting price to take off this low. And you may ask me, why do I expect price to take off this low, right? So why will I expect price to take off that low? Because we don't have a clear demand zone at anywhere at this point. So all these are inducement, right? All these are inducement, right? So that's why I'm expecting price to take off that low. So you could say that we have this structure, this supply zone, this demand zone at this point. Yeah, this demand zone could still hold price back to the upside, right? We may, consider this to be the liquidity graph, right? This could be the liquidity graph that price, actually show before, moving up to give us a break of structure. But price could, still comes down to this point and give some reaction. But to me, I'm not clearly expecting that zone to hold, right? I'm not clearly expecting this demand zone to hold, right? I'm expecting it to fail, right? But price may come down and give a reaction at this point and still fail. And there is still a possibility for price to, react on this demand zone. If the liquidity, the orders below at this demand zone, if the orders at this demand zone is not, strong enough, like is not, enough for price to, it is not enough to move price to the upside to continue the bullish move, then we could see price, come down and liquidate this low, right? We could see price comes down and liquidate this low before, start moving up to continue to just continue the bullish move. But most likely, um this could possibly happen. Price could possibly keep falling down and take out this demand zone and just keep falling, right? So that is the possibility, and price could still react from this point and just goes up. That's the possibility. So if price get to this point, I might still, on the lower time frame, look for buy opportunity to drive price to the upside, right? Look for buy opportunity if I have the confirmation to go for the. Of course, we are bullish. We are still bullish. Not that we are shifted to bearish, right? So we are still bullish. So if price pull back to this demand zone, it still has a high chance of, you know, it still has a high chance of respecting that block and moving up. So throughout the week, that's what I'm still gonna, look out for the week. And also, this is a valid demand zone, right? This is still a demand zone, right? So that was it for the daily time frame. We know how buyers now on the daily time frame that the trend is still bullish, right? On the that the trend is still bullish. So another thing I will, do is to, really go move down to the 4 hour time frame step by step to, still see what is going on the 4 hour. Of course, we see the 4 hour structure here. You can, just take these. This is our 4 hour recent structure break, right? Break, we have this break of structure, and we have this low, right? We have this low, and we have this low, right? We have this swing low, and this is where things, becomes keep, coming interesting, right? We have that low, and if you see this low actually takes out inducement before moving up, right? We have price, give us this equal high, comes down, take out this low, take out this low, right? Take out this low, this internal fox out low, break structure, just fall down. This demand zone was like it's like a flip zone, right? Let's just mark this out first. This was a liquidity graph here, right? So we have this demand zone. This is where we, see price reacting. This, reactions happen at this supply zone here, right? Where price try to, after making this pullback to the up to the demand zone, right? Is a valid demand zone here, reacting on the demand zone and down pushed up. Then this is where resistance price finds some resistance and start, ranging at this point. But finally, price just collapse from here. Means that this supply zone just, shows a reaction for pullback, for internal pullback, right? Price respect this supply zone, then push down, liquidate, gather some enough fuel at this low, and then just spike up and break structure, right? So that's it, right? So that demand zone there is still very valid for price to, just respect and move up. Okay. So at this point on the daily time frame, we could still this demand zone, this it's like a context, right? We could still expect price to, keep coming down until it, get to this point, right? Get to this demand zone before we can start expecting bullish to come in and drive. But if this demand zone fell, then we could see price, if this demand zone fell, then we could have a little, pushback, pullback, and just have a continuous, selling to the downside, and that could, really cause price to, taking out this daily swing low, right? Could really cause price to taking out this daily swing low, right? So that's it for the all right. So that's it for the higher time frame structure. So now what I will look out for now is to move down now to the lower time frame, right? To the 1 hour, which is intraday time frame to, analyze chart, analyze the price, and just see what price is currently doing, because at this point we are bearish on the low, we are bearish, right, on the lower time frame, and that bearish is just a pullback of this higher time frame structure, right? Just a pullback. So before this demand zone tells us, before we knew that, got the confirmation that our confirmation, a sign that will, let us know that price gonna respect this demand zone will only be after we have, confirmed on the lower time frame. We have seen a trend change, right? A market shift on the 1 hour time frame or the 15-minute time frame, right? Whereby price will comes down, give us a high, low, goes up, take out this high, then that's where we will know that we have seen a shift, bullish shift that also align with the higher time frame, the daily and the 4 hour structure. Then we can start looking for opportunity to buy to the upside. But till then, what will happen? We will just, observe this internal trend and just observe, see what price will do at this point to see if we will have any sell opportunity to continue the bearish internal flow, or to just expect to just, see what price you do when it's to just, just see what price you do when it gets to the demand zone, and what, just that's it. You just wait, nothing much. You just, gotta wait. Don't just have to, football in and try to, feel smart in the market. No, you don't do that. You just gotta, after the pre-market analysis, because that's what we're actually doing now, right? So we just, move down to the lower time frame, the 1 hour time frame, to mark out my recent structure range, which will be, let's just move it down. So so on the 1 hour time frame, on this 1 hour time frame, you can clearly see that the trend at this point is bearish, right? We know the odd higher time frame order flow is bullish, right? And this is just a pullback that price could just find demand at some point at this point and spike up. And before price, start, moving up from here, we'll still have a confirmation, a signal that will tells us that price have shifted to bullish at this point, that we are ready to go bullish. So what we will do will be to, find a bull opportunity and just buy the market to the upside. But till that happen, you just keep observing the market structure and doing what the market is telling us, not what we are feeling is most likely to happen, right? Of course, we have a demand zone at this point, right? And another thing I forget to bring out on the when marking out my recent structure range was a fib two, right? Was a fib two, right? I always do that after marking my structure. I always tend to, bring out a fib two and see where price is currently at. So like this, let's just use the 4 hour structure, right? Let's just use the 4 hour like this. We know that this is our recent high and low, right? These are the recent high and low on the 4 hour chart. So what I will do next will be to bring out the fib two and highlight from the low, from the swing low to the swing high, right? And then, of course, we have a premium and discount on the bullish market. We are expecting to, to buy on the discount zone. On the bearish market, we expecting to, sell on the premium range. So at this point, price has made its pullback to a discount range, right? So let me just mark this thing. Oh, So at this point, we have seen that clearly that price has moved. Yes. At this point, we have seen that price has moved down to the discount price range. So selling at this point may still be buying at this point may still be dangerous, right? Selling at this point may still be dangerous without a clear confirmation signal to tells us that the pullback still gonna extend, right, continue, right? So what we will look out for at this point will be to expect price to make the pullback to a demand zone, or we could start looking for opportunity at this point if we only have a shift in the market. And where would the shift be? Of course, we have mark out our demand zone, right? We still have another demand zone there. We still have another demand zone, which was this. This was just another demand zone, which is still the discount price range, right? This is still this is still a demand zone, which is still located at the discount price range, which means that price could still at this point spike up and just continue moving up, or price could still comes down to the extreme demand zone before we start having that shift and see price spiking up. So what we will do next is to will be to move down to the 1 hour time frame to see what price is clearly doing. So at this point, we have the first mitigation of the we have the first mitigation here of the demand zone, and we also have the second mitigation of the demand zone, right? And what happened? Price move up, consolidate around this point, and what happened? Price just spike down again, moving into the demand zone again. So that totally should tells us that this demand zone itself has failed, right? This demand zone has failed, right? Because price has been mitigated several times, like one, two, three, right? So the best thing, if this demand zone is to hold, right? If this demand zone is to hold, of course there is no clear zone here, that there is no clear valid demand zone at this point, that a clear order block or a sweep zone at this point that will really convince me to know that price gonna that it's gonna hold price to continue bullish. All right. So this is just an inducement for me, right? This is just an inducement for price to it's just giving price reaction to trap a lot of people, because at this point you can start seeing how bullish, how people buyers are start interacting at this point, right? So it could just be a trap for it, just an inducement zone, right? To trap to make a lot of people, things that price gonna, go bullish at this point, and as a result, what will they do? They will just tend to, start jumping in on the buy and expecting price to go up, and that's why you are seeing we are having this reaction. So as a market mechanic trader, what will I do at this point? What I will be to mark out my recent structure range, my validation point, that where I'm expecting price, where I'm expecting that if price break out of this zone, then we can expect bullish to happen. If price break out, then we can expect bullish to step in and keep driving the market. And where would that be? How will I do that? What I will do is to just observe the market structure, right? Observe the market structure closely and just know what is happening. So since we are already at this demand zone, right? Since we are already, let me take this out. Let me take this out. Since we are already on this demand zone, what I will look out for will be what we have here is just we have a low high, low high, low high. Then we have this consolidation before pullback. What I would do would be to identify a strong, a recent structure, a recent bearish trend at this point, a recent bearish structure at this point, recent structure range at this point to mark out and expect that if price take out this point, then this is what I'm expecting, this is where I'm looking out for buy. So at this point, this is where the structure will be, right? We have this, I will just start here to this is where we have a huge spike to the downside, we have this pullback, then we have another break, we have this pullback, then we have this break, then we have this pullback. So this was a recent 1 hour structure range, right? This was so this was the you know this was the swing eye. So the 1 hour swing eye, and we have this breakout structure here. We have this breakout structure here, right? And we have this low. We have this we have this low, which price has recently take out, right? We have a new breakout structure there, and where did price retrace to? Price retrace to this supply zone right here, right? We have price retrace to that supply zone right there, and after that supply zone, what happened? We start having this, range, this consolidation. Then this was the last point that price, pull back to before we have this breakout structure. So this becomes a, strong eye right here. This become a strong recent eye. So on this one time frame is just intraday time frame, and to just know where the current structure, the current market structure is at, and what we are looking for, right? So we have this is the the next swing eye, 1 hour swing eye we have there, and then we have this low, price made this low, you know, this could be the pullback start happening. So this is the lowest low that price get to before we start seeing that, bullish move to the upside, right? So after marking out the swing eyes, the 1 hour swing eyes and low, what else did I do? Of course, you remember we are still on a demand zone, and the trend is bullish. The higher time frame, the daily, the 4 hour is bullish, has a bullish order flow, right? We are expecting bullish. So as price get to this first, demand zone, anything can happen at this point. Price could start shifting bullish at this point and continue the uptrend. And there is still a possibility which I'm anticipating that price gonna comes down and just take out this first demand zone, use this first demand zone as inducement to mitigate the extreme demand zone before we start having that bullish move to the upside. And there is also still a high possibility for price to just break past this demand zone and just keep, but that will not happen that fast, right? We won't expect that to just happen overnight or that fast, right? Price need a lot enough liquidity to do that, right? Price need enough liquidity to do that, right? So if price is to fall down, right, to take off this demand, then we must see a kind of a big kind of, we must have a kind of liquidity grab at all. We must first see price spike up and just give us a kind of range liquidity before spiking down to take off this high. Because what, price always seek liquidity to move, right? Price seeks orders to move, right? Before sellers come into this market, it must seek buyers. There must be an opposite buyer, right? There must be an opposite order to fuel the sell orders, right? So what will price do? If price is to, comes down to this point, price will still need to move up to, grab some enough liquidity to feel it move to the downside, right? And that's why we see like this huge spike that we see happening this morning, right? What did price do? Price moved and there wasn't enough liquidity. That's why price, start, moving up, right? And what is it doing here? It's trying to, find li- a lot of, like, it's trying to seek liquidity, available buy side liquidity, right? It's trying to find, like, seek buy side liquidity to, fill its sell order, right? To fill its sell order, right? So what are we seeing? We are expecting price to make a pullback to the discount price range, to the premium price range before we start seeing the sell to continue. Of course, on this 1 hour time frame, we can clearly see that the trend is bearish at this point. And what are we gonna look out for? What I will do next after marking out the swing highs and low will be to mark up the structure range, right? Okay, let's bring out the fifth tool. Let me extend this. Almost this video is almost getting to 1 hour now. I believe any of you watching to this point will still understand everything I'm doing and what I'm looking out for on this per Euro USD. Is like a top-down analysis and what I'm expecting price to, to do. So after marking out the highs and low, and I'll just highlight from the recent 1 hour, from the 1 hour I bring out the fifth tool and highlight from the 1 hour high to the low. And then what next? We expect price to move pushed up to the premium price range for us to, start looking for sell opportunity, right? So at this point, we have a high, valid high and valid low. So at this point, what we will do is to expect price to, sorry guys, let me bring the fifth tool again. At this point, what we will do is to expect price to push back up to the premium price range for us to, start looking for sell opportunity, right? To continue this sell move, right? So if price should possibly, comes to supplies demand zone there. Let me mark out the demand zone we have. After bringing out the flip tool and measure from the swing highs and low, the next thing I do is to mark out my demand zone. We have this first, this demand zone, right? We have this demand zone, supply zone, sorry. We have this supply zone, and we also have this supply zone too. We also have this supply zone. So these are the two supply zone we expect price to move into at this point. So either so we are expecting price either made a pushback to this point. If price get to this point, already we can see that this supply zone is still located 50% range of this supply zone is still at the premium range. So price, there is still a chance that price could, come up to this zone, just come up to this first supply zone and give us, we look for a comfort entry signal at this point, either the shift that will, tells us that this pullback is over, which also tells us that it aligns with the 1 hour bearish trend because we are bearish at this point. So what we're looking out for will be a sell at this point. And where would we look out for the sell will be on the premium price range on either of these two supply zone, right? So this first supply zone could give us the signal to sell, or this second price could still seek enough liquidity to move, that will lead price to moving up to this extreme supply zone, right, to the second extreme supply zone before we can then look for a sell opportunity to sell price down. So these are the things I'm looking out for today, right? These are the things I'm looking out for, right? Because this is my structure range, right? So if I'm to so this is a 1 hour time frame, remember, right? So another thing I will do is I will also like to refine the supply zone, especially the the extreme supply zone, right? So that will lead me to moving down to 15 minute, right? Which is my entry time frame, right? 15 minute, right? So let me take this out. And after today, once I'm done with it, if price should, get into a point of interest, the supply zones, and we got a confirmation and everything, and we get a confirmation for entry, I will still do made a post market analysis about this trade and how it went, right? So at this point, on this 15 minute, I could refine this my extreme supply zone to the refined order block to the refined zone, which is this, right? This will be my refined block, right? The supply zone, right? Could still expect price to we could still see price, made a deeper pullback to this refined block extreme supply zone before we start having the bearish move down, and price could still just move into this block and just give us an entry sign, bearish sign at this point, and we got in on the sell position, right? We got in on the sell. So that's it. That's the few things I'm looking out for today. Not biggie, not too, shady. I'm not, trying to, feel smart here or trying to, build, you know, Richard Merlin, right? I'm just anticipating what price is doing, not what I'm feeling, right? Right? Not what I'm feeling, right? We are on the bearish move at this point, so this is my invalidation point, right? If price for price to remain bearish at this point, we expecting this swing highs to hold, price to respect the swing high, pull back to some supply zone and just continue the bearish. But if at the point price pushed up and break above this swing high, then that could totally tells us that the trend have shift bullish, right? So at this point, what we will look out for, we will then shift our bias to bullish, right? Of course, price is at the demand zone of the higher time frame, but for us to know that that demand zone will hold, we have to see a significant shift in the market whereby we see price coming up to, take out this structure, right? Because this is our last structure range, right? This is our last structure range. We have this break of structure, we have price comes down, goes up, mitigate the supply zone, comes down again, you know, this becomes our high, this becomes our low. Then what we expecting price to do is to pull back to either of this supply zone or pushed up to the extreme. What we don't want to see price to do is to break above this. If price break above this 1 hour swing high, then our bias have totally shift. We will then look out for bullish move, right? Not sell again, right? So that's it for the outlook of the week, and this is what I will be looking out for throughout the week, and just seeing and expecting price to do. So you can review the video and get to understand, of course, the weekly top down. The weekly analysis, might also, give you a lot of idea to also do, if not the same thing I'm doing, if not the exact, because this is my edge, this what works, this how I understand my market structure. You might not see it the same as yours, right? But the order flow, the outlook, everything might be different from yours, but this is what the market structure is doing for me. This is what, this is how I identify my structure, and yours might be different from this, but this is how I view the price, and this is how I take my trade, and how I, go about every decision I make. It's just about market mechanic, liquidity, and POI zone, supplies and demand. Not to, I don't have to complicate things here, right? So that's just that about this. That will be the end of this, record. Have a nice day. Take your time, watch this video, do your own review, do your own back test, and just, study the price, and just, add to your knowledge, right? Everything here might not make sense to you, but it's fine, right? Just, but it's fine, right? As a trader, you understand market structure, order flow, and you know how it goes. So you might still find some value in, in some point, right? Like the higher time frame, but that's enough of this video, all right? So that's it for the week. You can just, do your own review and know what you're looking for. But this is what I'm looking for the week. So you guys can follow up. If I'm opportune to, take any trade today, I will just do the post-market analysis and still post it in the group, and you guys will still, just learn from it, and just move on. Either loss or gain, we grow. That's how we grow. But I'm not expecting loss this week either. That's why I'm doing my best to make sure I, trying to, document and study the price very closely, and just don't do nothing else but what the structure tells me to do. All right, guys, have a nice day and a nice week.